Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Brent Barclay. Welcome to our What the CEO Needs You to Know Earnings Call Lab for January. Looking forward to spending some time with you today, and thank you, Ginger, for getting us going. I just want to make sure everybody's hearing me. On your screen, let's go ahead and open that chat box and just give me a yes, you can hear me. No, you can't. Just want to, well, I don't know how you're going to give me a no, you can't if it's in that chat box. There you go. Excellent. Sounds good as we get going. Well, thank you for taking time. I know you're busy. Appreciate you coming and be part of this program. On behalf of Acumen Learning, I hope you, your family, your significant others, colleagues, peers, etc., are all safe during this unprecedented time as we continue to deal with this pandemic, and looking forward to vaccination and other things that are rolling out today. As Ginger described, I'm going to be facilitating, but I also want to just quickly introduce one of my colleagues, Kenny Snar. He is on the phone with us today. He'll be helping answer some of those Q&A along with a number of Acumen Learning team members as we go throughout. And as Ginger said, there's a Q&A area. You can put questions in there. And then the chat box is what we'll be using for a lot of our communication. So Kenny will be helping us with that. Kenny's also one of our top facilitators in many spaces, and particularly one of his expertise is retail. And next month, we'll be looking at Walmart. So he's on as well to get ready for that as we get going. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to jump in and get going here. There's a lot we want to cover in the time we have. Now, I just want to make sure that you got the tools that we're going to use and you're comfortable with the tools we're going to use. The first tool is with that chat box. Let's go ahead and open that chat box and just make sure we're all comfortable. And here's what the question I'm going to ask. Where are you calling in from? Just put it in the chat box. Make sure everybody's got that open, ready to go. It could be a state, could be a country, could be a place in your house. I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the dining room, as many of us are working from home. Get a feel for where we're calling in from. Boy, all over the country, so thank you very much. Any internet? Oh, Belgium, thank you. Good to have you. Some international folks as well as we get going. So we'll be using that for the majority of our conversation. Again, if it's more question focused, go and put in the Q&A, and Kenny will maybe answer some of those, or we'll hold some of those towards the end. So we've got a number of us on the call today. The second thing we're going to be using is polling. Want to just make sure we're comfortable with that as well. So I've got a quick polling question. Going to go ahead and put it, open the poll. There's actually two questions on the first one. This just gets me to know who's on the call with us today. Is this the first time you've ever attended What the CEO Needs You to Know Earnings Call Lab? Go ahead and select. Now, make sure you hit submit. So once you select it, you got to hit the submit for it to actually calculate. And then the second is, are you a graduate of one of our programs, Acumen Learning programs? We have many of our graduates on the phone, but we also have many of those that are from other groups. And actually, I forgot to reset that time there. I hope that gave you enough time to answer that. If you weren't able to put in the polling, just maybe in the chat box, yes or no, as far as it's your first time here is the first question. And then if you are a graduate, yes or no, that's question number 2. So if you weren't able to get in the polls, go ahead and do it there. Let me go and share the results, and we'll kind of see what we've got here. Let's see. Yes, have attended before. Thank you for all those that came back, about 31%. And as far as graduated from our program, it looks like many of you haven't. So welcome for those that are new to Acumen Learning. At the end, we'll give a little overview of who we are. Okay, so those are the tools that we're going to be using as we get going. So I've got another kind of polling question as we start today, and here it is. You're coming to an earnings call lab. When was the last time you were able to listen to an earnings call? Maybe you were able to hit something this year. We are in the heart of earnings call season right now. Companies in the U.S. at least if they're on the annual year, they have to submit to the Security Exchange Commission their financial reporting by within 60 days of close. So many of them right now, we're having a lot of calls. In fact, just yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, you had Apple reporting, et cetera. And so lots going on right now. So some of you may have been able to listen to call this year. Some of you maybe on last year. It's been a while, and it's okay. Hey, I've never listened to call. That's why I'm here today. And then it looks like at least one of you said, I'd rather go to the dentist than to listen to this earnings call. Well, no worries. I hope by the end of this, I create some excitement, some interest. You can see the value of this, and with our tool, feel very comfortable that you can go through these and get it. What you're going to find is with this tool, and doing it 2 or 3 times consecutive, you'll get it. You'll really start to understand the process, what they're talking about, and be able to use that in your role. Well, let me go ahead and jump into our program here, and I'll start with, let me get rid of some stuff here. I'm going to start with some sobering statistics. As we get going today, so here we got these earnings calls, right? It's a chance for the executives to communicate to the market, to investors, to employees, going on, what their strategies, how they performed around their strategy, where the hits were, where the misses were, with the idea of getting that information out. Even though that's going on, this was a Harvard Business Review, if I remember correctly, did some research. They found about 95% of employees don't understand company strategies. Is that surprising to you? What do you think? Are they higher or lower? 95%. Here's another sobering statistic. 90% of employees don't understand their company's important metrics. So many of us in companies don't understand the key strategy. I understand my functional role and what we're talking about, but can I see the big picture? What about those key metrics? Why are they important? How can I impact them? Well, folks, now imagine you're the CEO of a large corporation. I've been saying Google the whole time. Of course, the company's name is, anybody know what the company name is? Put in the chat box. I was on the first slide. You remember? Is the company called Google? Alphabet. There you go. Alphabet. They changed their name a few years ago. Of course, they got Google. It's a major revenue generation for them, but they also have YouTube. They have some new products coming up, various groups that they're looking at, but obviously Google is the heart of what they're doing. So now you're the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai. We've got 160 subsidiary businesses, okay? So it's a lot of subsidiaries, 55 acquisitions in the last 5 years as you're bringing in companies, more than 132,000 employees. And I don't know if you knew this, and you hire 200 goats to mow your lawn. I don't know if you knew that. My colleague told me this yesterday, that they actually hire a herder to bring in goats, and they eat up the grass, lower the grass, and that's how they mow their lawn. Kind of interesting as you think about that. So go back to those statistics. 95% of your 132,000 may or may not understand your key strategies. Now, maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. 90% don't understand the key metrics and measures. So what is it as a CEO? What is it you need your employees to know? And how do you get that information to them? What do you need your customers to know? What about those shareholders, investors, stakeholders, et cetera? What do you want them to know? And of course, a lot of partnerships. What do you want the partners to know about your business? How can they help you with your strategic to get high execution? What we find in these large corporations is the senior executives are doing everything they can to squeeze a dollar of the financial statements. But as you think about these large corporations, who really impacts the business? Who is the one that's making that huge impact to the business? Put in the chat box. Is it the CEO, the CFO? Who's impacting at Google? Absolutely, Jim. It is the employees that are making that impact, okay? So what we find, though, in these large corporations, I get very functional focused. I'm in marketing. I'm in product development. I'm in HR. I get very focused like this. We rarely kind of step back and see that big picture perspective. Well, that's where an earnings call can come in and be quite helpful. Now, whether you're employed with Google or the company you're looking at, or maybe you're selling into that company, from a sales role. I got a partnership. Maybe I'm Google and I'm Apple and I'm trying to sell into, say, Verizon, example. How do I understand their company so that when I come and talk to them about our products, we got this real good partnership of how we can execute on their strategies? Or maybe it's just you're interested in these. In the end, how do I get that information distributed so employees, customers, those that sell into our suppliers are aligned with what we're trying to do at Google, and we get greater success from an execution perspective? Well, that's where these earnings calls can come in. Now, don't worry. If you've been on these before, if you've done an earnings call, if you've never done an earnings call, it doesn't matter. What I want to do in the time we have remaining is I'm going to give you a simple tool, a simple process, really, of how to walk through these, and then I'll give you a tool that will help you to walk through it. And here's my guarantee. If you do this 2 or 3 times consecutively, walk through the document with a company you're interested in, you sell to, you work for, whatever. Here's my guarantee. As you do it 2 or 3 times, you'll get it. You'll start to see this isn't rocket science. You'll be able to understand the key focus strategy of the company you're looking at. You understand the key levers, and then the goal is to say, okay, what am I going to do about that? Depending on what company, how am I going to apply it, use it in my personal life? How am I going to apply it and use it as I sell into them? How am I going to apply and use it if it's my company? And the outcome is this. My guarantee to you is it truly will build your credibility, your career, and company. People will start to look and say, hey, this person seems to understand what's going on. I want to understand where they're getting at or partner with you from an execution standpoint. So with that in mind, let me give you the process. 3 simple steps, Prepare, analyze, and apply. So let's jump in the first one, prepare. Now, before I jump into the three things I want you to do in the prepare phase, let me just quickly speak to these earnings calls. For those that haven't been on, there's kind of two parts to these earnings calls. They typically happen on a quarterly basis for most companies. Every once in a while, you'll find a company that doesn't do them, but most of the time, it's in their interest to share this. So on a quarterly basis, they have a chance to communicate to the market, and they have prepared remarks. They then go through, what did we say we were going to do, and what did we actually do? What is our guidance moving forward? What's going on around them that might impact their business? What are the opportunities they're pursuing? Once they're done with that, analysts who work for these large investment companies get a chance to ask clarifying questions. Now, there goes a little different. They're trying to get information. They're trying to glean from them accuracy of information. If they kind of question something that they're doing, they may say, can you give me a little more color on that? So they're trying to build models that predict what's going to happen in their stock price. Their whole goal is to write a report that goes back to their investors that says, hey, what do I do with my stock? Do I buy more? Do I sell? Do I hold? And there's a couple of other options there as well. So that's what these calls have. They're typically somewhere, the low end is probably about a 40-minute. High end could be upwards of, I'm trying to think the longest one I've done, probably an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours. But majority of them are right in about that hour. Now, the first probably 20 or so to 30 minutes is going to be their prepared remarks, and the rest of it's going to go to the Q&A. So that's how they're structured. So what are the three things I want you to do? There's three simple things I want you to do. Number one, you got to locate the call or transcript. Now, there's this unique website. We happen to be talking about it today. Oh, and I went to right there to Chrome. So the website that we're talking about, of course, is going to be Google right there. All you have to do is go to Google and you type in what quarter am I looking for. Of course, it's their Q3. By the way, their full year numbers come out next Tuesday, February 2nd. I'll talk about that in a moment. So I have to do, now I don't have to do Alphabet. I can write Google and it's smart enough to say, yeah, that's us. And it'll put you there. Q3, Google earnings. Boom. Now, what I'm looking for when I get here is I want to look for their website. There's a number of third-party companies that can give you data, but I like to go right to the heart of it, so I'm looking for them. Now, interesting enough, this is actually their website. How many knew that abc.xyz was their website? That's kind of a unique website. So you click on that. Here it is. Here's their page, investor relations page, where you get that data right here, okay? Now, there's basically 2 to 3 things I'm looking for. Number one, I want the press release. The press release gives you a brief overview, but what I'm really looking for is access to these financials. They're required by law to submit to the Securities Exchange Commission, which we call the SEC, their financial performance at the end of a quarter, and they have about 45 days, and it's called a 10Q. You might want to jot that down. The form they fill out is a 10Q. If it's an annual, it's called a 10K. But when the call happens, some companies, they haven't posted their 10Q, so here is where you can find what's going on with their financial performance. So that press release is one thing I like to get access to. The second thing I like to get access to is a transcript. Now, some companies like Alphabet, they have it right there. This is literally where they go through the webcast and they provide a write-up of what was said. Now, if it's before the call, you're not going to get that. So you've got to actually go to the webcast, and the webcast, often you can sign up. Now, Alphabet's unique because they own YouTube. All their webcasts are in YouTube. So there it is. That's how you get access to it. And other ones, you've got to register for it, and then you're ready to go. So, for example, here, you click there, and they've got a placeholder of where it's going to be. So on February 2nd, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, they're going to have that call. Within a short period of time, you'll be able to go back to this website and you'll be able to see a transcript as well as a press release as well. So those are the types of things I'm looking for. The last one I'm going to share with you, Alphabet doesn't have. It's a slide deck. Many companies will give a slide deck where they kind of have summarized slides that can be helpful about what's going on in their business. I love to get access because I get a lot of details summarized in those slides. Alphabet's not providing that in theirs, but many companies do. Okay, so that's that first step. You got to locate the call or the transcript. Again, go to Google, type in what quarter. So right now, everybody has ended, all the companies that are on an annual basis have ended their quarter. So these next calls are all going to be full year Q4 calls. Just search that. Q4, full year, whatever company earnings, and it'll take you to the website and you should be able to get to them. Once I've got that, the next step is to review my notes. You might say, Brent, what notes are you talking about? Well, if I've done this multiple times, this document becomes your notes. If you've never done it, you can do exactly what we did before. I could jump over here and I can get their press release from Q2 and do a quick review of what's going on if I want to prepare myself for that call. It's all available at our fingertips. So that's a simple way if you want to kind of review what happened in the prior quarter, you can do that. You can also search many of these analysts will do a summary of their report. You can kind of read through that and get some basics. But the idea is, particularly like, for example, if I'm selling into a company, I'm going to do it every single quarter. And so all I have to do is pull up this workbook and say, okay, what did they say last time? Now I'm ready to listen, see if it's changed, what's happened to strategy, etc. So last step is to meet with your team. Now, this isn't a mandated, but I would recommend it's a great way to continue to build your understanding is by doing it with somebody else. Again, if it's everybody who's from Google, maybe I get my colleagues together and we listen together and then say, what did you get? What did I get? As we kind of complete that doc. If it's somebody you're selling into, maybe it's colleagues that help sell into that account or other salespeople. Or if you're just interested, maybe it's just a friend who has an interest in that, you do it together. But I find if you do it together, you often get some benefits with that. So that's the preparation phase. The heart of what I want to discuss today is the analyze phase and kind of introduce you to two tools. But in order to do that, I want to introduce you to a simple framework. We call it the 5-driver business model. Now, some of you have come through our courses, so you'll help me as I'm going to do a quick walkthrough for those that have never seen this before. What we suggest here at Acumen Learning that these 5 drivers, cash, profit, assets, growth, and people, are the fundamental drivers, whether you're 160 billion revenue generation Google, or your small mom and pop shop. These are the fundamental drivers companies focus on. So let me do a quick review of what they are, and then I'll show you how we use them to do the analyze phase. For those that have been through my class, our classes before, our programs online, help me as we walk through this. So we talk about cash. Now, when we talk about cash, we talk about the importance of cash first, then we talk about some of the key metrics. So fill in the blank for me. As we talk about the importance of cash, cash is blank. What would you put in there? Cash is... Absolutely. Cash is king, a common phrase, maybe queen, but cash is vitally important. In fact, some analysts, some investors, some consultants will say cash is a company's oxygen supply. Vitally important in a company. So there's 2 key levers, 2 key metrics most companies look at. One is called cash and cash equivalent. That's the accounting term, and that represents kind of the cash on hand. Now, what do investors want the cash they're holding on to do? Well, some might say, I want it to grow. Some might say, well, no, I don't. Analysts kind of want us to invest that money and get it back. Investors want us to invest that money and get it back to them. So you see the cash and cash equivalent, which is on your balance sheet, kind of go up and down. The second metric that companies look at is called the cash flow from operations. Now, this represents all the cash dollars that came into a company in a given period of time. Now, what do you want that to do? Well, you want that to grow. You want that to increase year over year. So those are the 2 metrics companies often look at. Now, there's other metrics like free cash flow, where that money gets spent, like CapEx. There's a number of other things you can look at, but very common. Cash and cash equivalent and cash flow from operations become key metrics. Now, you'll notice to the right of that, we got the cash flow statement. The foundation of the cash driver is the cash flow statement. So the second driver we often talk about is called profitability or profit. Now, when we talk about profit, there's 2 kind of levers you have there. You can increase something or you can decrease something. Anybody remember what those are? If I want to grow my profitability, what do I want to increase? And what can I reduce or cut back? Absolutely. I'm going to increase my sales right here. Or sometimes we refer to that as our revenue as well. What can I do what do I lower or reduce? Absolutely. Let's see, that's Scott or Stephanie. It's moving too fast. I can't see it. But yeah, I reduce my cost or expenses. Now, we all hear about cost reduction because our executives recognize that that's something that we can often have a little more control over. But in the ideal world, you're growing your revenue while reducing your costs creates profitability. Types of metrics you could hear there. Of course, gross profit, operating profit was sometimes referred to with an acronym called EBIT. In the chat box for extra credit, what does EBIT stand for? Could also be EBITDA. And then, of course, net profit are very common metrics. Anybody know what EBIT stands for? Wants to put in the chat box? Earnings before interest and tax. Absolutely. EBITDA is the same concept. The additional line items are going to be depreciation and amortization. So it's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. You might jot in your notes real quick. Profitability is one of those metrics that we use a lot of similar terms. So profit, earnings, and income are the same thing in business. So if you hear net profit, net income, they're all talking about that key profitability metric for the company. Now, of course, the foundation of that, again, is going to be my income statement, sometimes referred to as statement of income, a statement of operations, a number of terms, P&L, the most common phrase you'll hear for that. Okay, the next driver we talk about is assets. And when we define assets, we're talking about anything we own or control which has value. Earnings, anything you own or control which has value. So in the chat box, what are some of the things you think Google owns and control which has value? Looks like I got a quick question while you're jotting those in. What's every bit is taxable? Oh, that's a good guess there, Weston. Every bit is taxable for EBIT there. Yeah, so what do they have? They've got IP, they have some land, they have software, they have office buildings, absolutely. They have cash. I mean, that's $133 billion in cash is a pretty decent amount there. So the balance you're looking at as assets is how do I deploy that versus how do I kind of strengthen my balance sheet? Meaning, for example, I got $133 billion. I can take that money, I could do a bunch of investments, or do I hold on to that? Why am I holding on to it? What am I getting back to investing? So there's this constant battle between two things, what they call asset strength and asset utilization. So we're looking at balancing that. Now, some of the metrics you might look at there are going to be like equity ratios, which is a leverage ratio. What portion of equity do you have in your assets? You can look at like all the return on calculation, return on assets, return on equity. That gets to more of a utilization calculation, et cetera. Okay, well, then we jump again. The foundation of assets is going to be my balance sheet. And of course, then we get to growth. Of course, publicly traded companies, of the 5 drivers, this is the one that gets most time and attention. How are we growing our profitability, our cash flow, our assets, et cetera? Of course, the core of the model then is going to be people. When we talk people, we're talking about both internal customers, colleagues, peers. How do we work better to get greater execution? And then, of course, those that buy and use our products or services. So, folks, that's a brief summary. If you want more detail, later today, we're going to give you an opportunity to learn about an online self-paced opportunity, as well as if you're interested in expanding your knowledge on your teams. We can talk about that a little bit later as well. But with that simple introduction to the framework, let me introduce you to the tool. 5 drivers can be used as a lens to get to the strategy of what the company's talking about. And we got a tool called the Executive Alignment Tool that helps to get that. Here's how it works. At any earnings call, or really any executive communication, as you're listening to the communication, how do I use that lens to help me understand what they're talking about? Well, the 5 drivers is a simple way to say which of the 5 drivers are they focused on. Here's how it works. As you're listening to that call, if you have the transcript, every time they say something about a cash, you put a little slash mark. Every time they say something about profit, you put a little slash mark. Now, don't worry if you haven't been through our program and you're not quite as familiar about what we mean by cash. We give you a definition right there. It explains what we mean by cash. Not only that, we also we're calling it examples, but I kind of see them as trigger words. As I'm listening to them, I'm listening to some of these trigger words. First trigger words on cash would be sources of use of cash. So dividends, distribution, stock buybacks, debt. You see a number of things that kind of speak to potential cash. So I'm listening for that, and I say, hey, our dividends went up. Well, okay, dividends, that's going to be a cash. But guess what? If they went up, okay, that's a growth as well. So you have to memorize. It's all right there. And, of course, you have that wonderful website, Google, where you can get more detail. So I'm listening for those, and I'm going to mark them up. Once I'm done with that, then I go back and answer 4 simple questions. We're trying to make it easy. 4 simple things that will help you understand that big information you're getting and solidify it into kind of 4 things. The first thing is this: which business driver gets this most attention? I love the second part. Why? Why is that important? What's going on in the market? Why are they communicating around that driver? Oh, excuse me. Number 2, where were the 2 or 3, or excuse me, what were the 2 or 3 main points the executive was trying to make? Number 3, what are the goals, trends, and objectives going forward? And then finally, what key questions or concerns were raised by the analyst community? Of course, that fits very well with an earnings call. Folks, that's the tool. What I want to do is I'm going to quickly walk you through how to do it, and I'll show you it filled out. So let me walk through. First, the first step is listening to what they say and trying to figure out which of the 5 drivers are they looking at. So here we go. I've got Sundar, a statement from him. So let's go through this. Here it is. And in the chat box, see which of the 5 drivers on the right is he communicating? This quarter, our performance was consistent with broader online environment. It's also a testament to our investment we've made in improving to improve search and deliver a highly relevant experience that people turn to for help in moments big and small. Of course, we're talking about pandemic and the importance of information. What's going on? What places are open? What places are closed? Where can I get my shots, et cetera? All that information. So what do you see in that? Yes, there's some growth in there. As you look at increased investment. Investment could be cash as well. Of course, right here, you got people there. Okay, you're starting to see it. Let's go to the next sentence. When we saw improvement in advertising spend across all geographies and most verticals, with the world accelerating its transition to online and digital services. This kind of accelerating to online digital service, we've heard it in a number of the calls we've done, even back to ExxonMobil and oil and gas talking about this digital transformation, et cetera. So what levers do you see there? Investment, as you look at investment, what would that be, that 5 drivers? Well, investment could be cash because it takes money to invest, but also I'm buying assets or I'm developing assets. So you can see assets as well. Yeah, online services could be assets. Absolutely, Sammy. Absolutely. Digital services, some of their products there, absolutely could be assets for sure. You come down here to the last one in Q3, we also saw strength in Google Cloud, Play, YouTube subscriptions. What come to mind? Which 5 drivers there? Absolutely, those are assets. Google Cloud, Play, and that. Where would you put subscription? What do you think? Yeah, profitability could, because that's going to generate, subscriptions will generate revenue, eventually become cash. Now, the first thing is you notice going through this, I want to be clear that this marking up which driver they're focused on is not an exact science, meaning you may get more cash than I get, and I may get more profit than you got. But we've done this so many times, like myself, probably, I don't know, 600 times at least. And what you find is the top 2 or 3, independent of the actual number, will rise to the top of what they're focusing on. That's how it works. Let's do 2 more real quick. So I'm not going to read them, I'm just going to give them to you. This is from Ruth Porat, their CFO at Alphabet and Google. Which of the 5 drivers is she focusing on this statement? Kind of review on your own, put them in the chat box. If you haven't had a chance to do that, do it. Try and see if you can pick which of the 5 drivers will help to make you more comfortable to do this on your own. What are we seeing in her conversation? It's like growth, profit. We're seeing a lot of profit. Revenue is a great line for profitability. Eventually, if we collect, it becomes cash. So some people can see that growth, cash, profit, growth. Absolutely. You know, a couple things that stand out to me as I go through, look at this. Anytime I hear increase, I'm looking at, okay, is that a potential growth? What is that? Advertiser spend. Advertisers or people, I could see a people there. And where are they doing it? In YouTube, some of our assets. Search is an asset for us. So there, you know, there's a number there. I could get growth, I could get people, and I could get assets for sure on that. There may be others. Of course, here we're seeing assets. Then we jump down here, my revenue. Often I think of revenue right there. Even though it can impact cash, revenue is the top lever I have to impact my profitability. And what happened there? 46, we're up. That's growth right there, right? And then we come down here, we can look at margins of profitability. Anyways, there's a number of them that you can look at. Here's the last one. For those that were on our call before, you'll remember Mark Mahaney, however you say it, he actually was on a previous call. He was on our Amazon call. These analysts don't just look at one company, they're looking at companies across the industry as well. So again, let's do the same thing quickly. Which drivers do you see? What is he talking about here? Which drivers? Profitability for sure. When he actually says the word profitability, that's a pretty easy one to see. Yeah, assets, he's specifically asking about Google Cloud, what's happening there. Google Maps down here, there's Discover, which is a new technology they're looking at. Margins, again, gets me to that profitability. Growth, how quickly are they going to be growing? A number of them that you could kind of look at. Well, folks, in this time, we don't have time to go through the whole letter, but that's how it works. Every time I see it. Now, if I have the document myself, I just write the word right next to it. If I don't, I just kind of get a sheet, and I don't have to have the executive alignment in front of me. I can just grab a piece of paper and just start write cash, profit, asset growth, people, and just start marking it up. In the end, it's going to look something like this. So here it is completed. Now, you notice I got 2 different colors. Why the 2 different colors? For me, I like to separate what was kind of the prepared remarks. What were they trying to communicate? And then where were the analysts trying to kind of get more clarity, more questioning? get more data on. It helps me to see, are they on the same board or are things a little different? But in the end, you add them up. So first of all, you got 19, of course, 42, 49, 48. Here's the top two. Now, let me just ask this question, see if we can get this. Independent of whether you read this, just your knowledge on Google in general. You'll notice most of these are right in that 40 range, right? Why do you think cash? They don't talk so much about cash. What is Google known for around cash? Yeah. What you'll find is this one jumps dramatically. For those of us who were with Boeing last time, on our last call, boy, they were running out of cash. They had negative cash that they generated from their operations. So cash was definitely towards the top. But of course, Google has plenty of cash. I think it's 133 billion at the end of the quarter. So now I've got that first step. Go through the analysis using the 5 drivers. So now I jump to the questions. Let me quickly walk through these for you. So the first one, and I filled it out based upon what I saw, just to give you an example. Which business driver seems to get the most attention and why? The 2 that stood out to me were assets and growth. Why? Alphabet has many products and services available to their to provide to their users. They got so many things, and they're talking about latest and greatest. What do they have available for their users? The second point is this, and they really made a big point because of the pandemic, access to information has never been more important. They described everything from people being able to get to the right place to find toilet paper. They didn't say the toilet paper, but to find products, to knowing where they can find out more information about the pandemic. What are the restrictions I have within my location? What are my state restrictions about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, and all that different data. Never a more important time for them to be able to access that information. Provide a highly relevant experience that people turn to help both in the moments of big and small occasions. Search improvements, big advancements, and they talked about improvements to the search capabilities, big advancements in the spelling system. It's the greatest update they've done in 10 years. This other one's kind of interesting. You can search to identify key moments in videos on their platforms. And then, of course, they said a very popular is hum to search for music, where you can hum the tune and it'll tell you what song to access that. Of course, some new hardware, Google News partnership they had. That's a big deal for them. Over 200 publications, growth in Google Workspace. That was one as well as people collaborate, working from home, etc. So a lot about the assets. Why are they talking about? Because that's their business. They're deploying new technologies, new approaches to be cutting edge to provide an excellent experience with their customers. So from growth, of course, there was a little bit of a decline in Q2 for them as advertisers started to pull back on their investment during the pandemic. So the real question is, where are you at as of Q3? And what they saw is increase of advertising spend. Revenues are up. Collaboration, the importance of growth around their collaboration, what they call Google Workspace, which has Google Meets and some other technologies, trying to compete with the Zooms, the WebExes of the world. Rebound on branded advertising has increased. Spending YouTube, this was the most interesting to me. YouTube meditation videos were up 40%. I don't know if you knew that. Of course, I know why. I've got 6 kids, and working from home, that can be a little complicated. So how can I kind of de-stress a little bit? Do it yourself. Face mask tutorials, 1 billion views as we try and kind of protect ourselves. So there's a myriad of things that they talked about from growth, but obviously profitability. As they saw advertising spend decrease, they wanted to communicate to the market. We're seeing that improvement and that coming back. So it'll be interesting to see next Tuesday what's happened. How much of that is we ended up getting a pandemic starting to be, getting vaccinations starting to be deployed. So those are the 2 things that kind of stood out to me. So then you go to the next question is this. What were the 2 or 3 main points the executive was trying to make? I kind of cheated. I did 4. Here's why. He starts out by explaining these are the 4 things that we're focused on throughout the year. And he kind of gives updates on each one of them. And so those were kind of his key messages. Number 1, creating the most helpful product for everyone. And he talks about, the updates on the spelling technology, the hum to search for music. And that's us trying to provide a helpful product for everyone. Provide the most trusted experience for our users and what they're doing around trust from the standpoint, not just security. That next one talks a little bit more about security, but also trust. I can go there and I'm going to get the answers I want immediately. So executing at scale productively, securely, and collaboratively, and finally creating sustainable value, which means creating financially viable and self-sustaining products. What's interesting about Google is they generate so much money from their Google products that they have this whole other group, they call it other bets. And this is where they take some of that money and they're investing in new technologies. One of them is, I think it's called Lemo, L-E-M-O, but it's self-driving vehicles. They're part of that. And they just rolled out self-driving vehicles down in Phoenix. And so they take that money and they invest in other technologies that provide an incredible and helpful product for everyone. So that was kind of their key messages that they spoke to. What were their goals and objectives going forward? So now that I got what they were saying, well, where do they say they're going? Big focus, and this came from their CFO, focus on making the right investments to support growth. They're trying to see around the corner, anticipate where the markets are going, and providing products or services that help with that. And then the big factor, and we hear this a lot right now, this pandemic has really pushed this to technology, virtual learning, virtual collaboration, all that different changes. I remember one of the companies said we've advanced 10 years as far as where we thought we'd be 10 years from now in this pandemic. We were forced to. So given the acceleration to digital transformation, we are focused on ensuring that we remain well positioned to deliver for users and advertisers in an evolving environment. Basically, they want to be at the cutting edge of all the future where technology is going and be a key player in that. So big interest there. Well, last thing is this. So what were the analysts question about? There's kind of three areas. There's a number of things they looked at, but three that stood out to me. One, growth around Google Cloud. They would kind of talk about them being a little bit late to the game, so to speak. So how much market share they get, and they talked about a lot of advancements as all these companies are coming on board, really seeing Google Cloud as a huge opportunity for them. Branded advertising returning, YouTube spend, so that was big. And really the point there was not just it's increasing, but where is it increasing? What verticals are showing the most promise to regain pre-COVID spend? A lot of companies are trying to get, and the analysts, when are we going to get back to where we were in 2019 around how much companies are spending on their advertising or whatever the company might be? So that was a big. The last one was this Department of Justice lawsuit. You may have heard of this. Google is unlawfully, this is what the Department of Justice, unlawfully maintaining monopolies through anti-competitive and exclusionary practices. A little later, I'll kind of talk about what Sundar kind of said about it. But basically, they're feeling like they're a monopoly. And, obviously, we don't ask Jeeves anymore. Many of us are probably not Yahooing it much anymore, or what's the other one? AOL in it? I don't know. Do you AOL it? I can't remember. But we Google it. And when your name of your company becomes a verb, obviously you got tremendous. Oh yeah, Bing in it. And some of us might be Bing in it as well. But Google is a key player, so they're getting pressure around that. So folks, you can see how taking this tool, can you see how that takes a lot of information, summarize it in something that you can now build off of? And that's where we'll go here in a moment. But before I do, I want to share the second tool. The second tool is called the Navigating the Financial. You don't have to have gone through our class to get into the weeds on this. This tool can help you get the basics of what's going on in the business. There's a purpose why I call it Navigating the Financial. That's exactly what the tool does. So you'll notice, first off, on the left-hand side, I got the 5 drivers: cash, profit, asset growth, and people. What I love about this tool, it brings the 5 drivers. It also then brings the key metrics and the financial statements all into one place. So you don't have to have gone through the class. With this tool, you can quickly assess what's going on. Now, if you don't know what the terms are, either come to one of our classes, do the online program, or Google it, right? Search out, what is cash and cash equivalent? Why is that important? Cash from operations, etc. But here's how it works. You take this tool, and with their press release or their 10Q, you can find the financials. And all you're going to look at is what happened to them. So I want to see what happened to cash. I want to look at the 2 key metrics most companies look at: cash and cash equivalent. And the genius is this right here. It tells you where to go to find it. If there's any sort of calculation that must happen, it tells you how to do that down here. That's how it works. Now, you notice you got a current, and then you can have a comparison if you want to do that. So what am I comparing it against? So here's what I want to do. We're going to do the first 5 together as a group. So get ready. You're eventually going to need a little calculator. You don't have the financials in front of you. I'm going to give you them. So we got to get cash and cash equivalent. This is where we're starting. What statement do I go to? Put in the chat box. I want to make sure people are comfortable using the tool. So where do I go to find it? I kind of circled it. Just put it in the chat box. Absolutely. I want to go to that balance sheet. So let me take it. Here's my balance sheet. Now, for those of you who are in our class, you'll remember they're listed by most liquid at the top down to least liquid at the bottom. Liquid meaning how quickly they convert to cash. So most liquid's going to be cash. So find it. I want cash and cash equivalent. Now notice this. This is a little different. A lot of companies put the most recent year first and then the prior year second, but they do it the other way. So here's the most recent year. I'm looking for how much cash and cash equivalent did they have on as of September 30th. Now, they don't give us a specific one that says just in the quarter. Sometimes you get that, but we don't get this. So this is actually for the first 9 months. How much cash and cash equivalent do they have at September 30th, 2020? Put it in the chat box. What's the number there? How much cash and cash equivalent? So right here's the line item. There you go. It's that $20,129,000,000. Now, a couple of you put this. Let me just give you a little heads up since you brought it up. Many times their executives will take those two line items, add them together. That's this right here, $132 billion. What happens is this cash and cash equivalent either is actually cash or it's in a short-term investment that will convert to cash within 90 days. Some of you who've taken our class may remember that. Well, if companies have more, they don't want to keep it. They know they're not going to need all the $133 billion in the next 90 days. So what do? They take a portion of that and they put it in a little bit longer return. So that's marketable securities. They're invested in CDs, commercial paper, short-term bonds, low-risk bonds. And the idea is it's greater than 90 days, but it will convert back to cash within a year period of time. And that's how they generate profit, a little return on that cash. So when executives talk about their cash position, they'll add those two together. But I only asked for the cash and cash equivalent, so there's the number, $20,129,000,000. Okay, let's do the next one. We got to get our cash from operations just quickly in the chat box. Where do we find it? What statement do I go to? Absolutely. If you hear cash from operations, cash flow, it's going to be on that cash flow statement. So here it is. And what we're looking at is this top section. In particular, the line item we're looking at is called net cash provided by operating. Now, they do have quarterly numbers. This first statement, I just want to do quarters. So you're looking in this column. And what I want is that net cash provided by operating activities. Put that in the chat box. How much cash did Google generate net of their operation? This is the cash that's left over that they have available to pay down debt, to distribute in dividends, to invest in their products. There you go, $13 billion, absolutely. And here is how much they did in the first 9 months. So you can get that data there. So there you go, 17 billion. Of course, what do you think investors want their cash from operations to do year over year? They want that to go up or they want that to go down year over year? What would you guess? The cash they generate for the core business, absolutely. Investors love to see it. For those that were on Boeing, that number for the first 9 months last year was a negative number. Meaning when they got all the way done, they didn't generate positive cash flow. They generate negative cash flow. Not a good thing, but they have a lot of cash available to kind of get on the other side, they're hoping. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I want a total revenue. And again, just to practice one more time, where do I go to find total revenue? Also could be called sales. If you're looking at retail organizations, absolutely. It's my P&L or income statement. Here it is. Again, I want the quarterly number, so let's focus here. And I'm looking for total revenue, total sales, revenue or sales. Put in my chat box. How much revenue did they generate? And while you're there, go ahead and go down and get the net income. That's the next one. How much net income did they generate? So everybody, you got the first one. Oops. Here's their revenue. How much net income? There you go, 11.2 right down here. So I plug those two in. Those are those two numbers. Net income, $11,247,000,000. What do we want that to do year over year? Want that to go up, absolutely. Want our revenue to go up as well. Now I've got the metrics. What do I need to get my net income? So now I got to calculate. I need a net profit margin. I got to get the net income number. I also got to get my total revenue. Where am I going to find them? Both on the income statement. In fact, I found them. They're right there. Here's the numbers. All I have to do is plug those in. $11,247,000,000 divided by $46,173,000. Grab your cell phone. This is the one I'm going to have you calculate. This is all we're going to do. I'm going to show you all the rest of the number here shortly. But what is the number there? Take the $11,247,000,000 divided by 46,173. What do you get? Yeah, if you multiply it by 100, it'll move the decimal place to, yeah, it's 24.4. That's kind of what we're looking for. What does that tell me? It says for every $100 Google brought in revenue in as of Q3, they generate $24.40 of profitability. Now, if I want to improve that, what are the levers I have to improve that? You remember? We talked about them earlier, the same two levers that impact profitability. If I want to improve that margin, what do I got to do? Manage my costs or increase revenue or pricing in particular to get the margin to change. So folks, that's how it works. You've just done accounting. You've just done some calculation. That's how it works. And with this tool, it's pretty good, pretty easy to kind of get to the numbers. So here's how it is. Look, I've got it filled out. I filled the rest of it out, and this is for Q3 2020. And the comparison year I did was Q3 2019. Now, maybe you may want to do a sequential evaluation. So you do Q3 against Q2. You can do that very easily. But this is quarter over quarter to kind of see what's going on here. Now, one of the things you'll notice is they actually had a big expense back here in net income growth. They got a benefit, and they ended up, so that's why their profitability ends up going down. And then it swings the other way the next year because they didn't have that in Q3 of 2020. You can also look at it from a 9-month perspective. So here's the first 9 months of the year. You start to see what's going on. Look at that. Revenue's up year over year. I can see that. Net income, even during the pandemic year, they're getting growth. Here's the growth numbers. What are you seeing year over year? Slight growth, but you're dealing with pandemic. It did outperform the prior year where you also had growth. So you can see how quarter over quarter, year over year, you can start to see patterns, what's going on. Now, not only can you look at internal to the company you're assessing, but you also can look external. So I just pulled a company similar from the industry. Here's Microsoft. You kind of see where Microsoft, interesting enough, cash flow, right, aligned the two, very close. Profit, revenue, Google's, 20 billion more, but, not shabby Microsoft, 104, et cetera. Look, though, Microsoft's ability to generate greater profitability. Now, part of that is some of their investment in R&D can impact those numbers, et cetera. You start seeing what happens on growth. You look at equity ratios, et cetera. Again, if you want more detail, just do a Google search to understand what those are. The last one I've got here is you can look at any company. You can compare whatever the company you're interested in to any company. Now, those are with us last month, we looked at Boeing. And of course, you see the big difference. Google's definitely succeeding during the pandemic, and Boeing is really struggling. When you got negative cash flow, $14 billion in negative cash flow, that means they're not generating positive cash. They're having to borrow, they're having to divest assets to keep afloat or draw upon lines of credit. You look at the revenue growth, how much change has happened. Of course, we know airlines have dropped. Of course, what does that do to demand for new airplanes? That drops as well, and that's what you're seeing in these numbers. So folks, that is called the Navigating the Financial. And that completes your analysis. Once you've done that executive alignment assessment, you get a clear picture of what they're talking strategically, where their focus is. Now you come and say, well, what do the numbers tell me? Is that consistent with what they said, or is there a different story there? From there, to know and not to do is not to know. You've now done this analysis. You don't do anything with it. We've kind of wasted your time. So let's talk about how do you apply it? What do you do with this? Exercise 3 is all about the application. So let's go first step of that. What do? You've taken all that information. What are some of the key insights or new insights you gain as a result from this analysis? What stood out to you? What are the key findings? Now, it kind of depends upon your role. If I'm internal to the company, maybe stuff like, hey, they talked about our department and what they think we should be doing. Or maybe they're talking about a competitor and how we're trying to compete with them, and I actually could play a role in that. If it's a customer you're selling in, it might be, hey, here's one of their key strategies. How can our product or service help to impact that? Or if you're just interested in the company, it might be, what stood out to you? How does that apply to your a portfolio you want to invest in? Or how are you going to use that information in whatever way you want to? So here's what I found. First of all, I recognized many of their products, but there were some I didn't even know, like this Lemo, self-driving vehicles. I didn't even know about that. Different ways they've improved their search capabilities I was unaware of. So obviously, diversity of Alphabet's portfolio product, their flagship product, of course, is their search, Google Cloud, and the growth they're expecting there, e-commerce platforms they have, Lemo self-driving vehicles. Of course, I knew Android phones and the new technologies they have, maps, translate apps, and a myriad of other. The other thing I thought was interesting, 99%, the Google portion of that company, they generate 99% of their revenue. So majority of it is still Google. And then they take that money and make investments for products. And it really speaks to one of his third points that they got to be financially viable products and where they at with that. Of course, one of the things I thought was interesting, the pressure from DOJ, Department of Justice, and Sundar's comments on that. We create basically saying, look, we know it's there, but look, we're creating the best product for all users. We're not trying to do antitrust or anti-competitive practices. And he says, look, scrutiny is not new for us. It's almost like, hey, it's not that big a deal. Although they did have one decision that was like $1.5 billion they had to pay out. Of course, they're carrying quite a bit of money as well. But I thought that was interesting. And how will that impact the future if they get a big settlement? Of course, in strong players during the pandemic, I knew they were always successful, just to understand their business, but to see, the demand for information, how important it is during the pandemic, products, their cloud services, Google Workspace, and how that's building out to compete with the Zoom and others, smartphones, revenue's up, profitability is up. I mean, there's just a lot of strong success performance during the pandemic. As we look at some industries are just doing very well, like the Googles, the Amazons of the world, and some are really struggling during this pandemic, like the Boeing we looked at last month. So the meat of it is the next two steps. Based on what you've learned, what are 3 actions you'll take? For me, participate in Q4. It's next Tuesday. I want to see, I just read your Q3. What happened in Q4? Did we see that growth? Or we see improvement? Complete the workbook. Share my action plan with what am I going to do about it? I'll share with my supervisor. What am I going to do? How am I going to apply this within the work that we're doing? And of course, share my findings with the team, come up with what we could do as a team. Now, the real key of this is getting to this review. What we're saying is once you go through it, have a conversation with somebody. Which group? It depends on who you're analyzing. If I'm analyzing my company, I'm going to take that information. If I'm a Googler and I'm going to go back to my super and say, here's what I heard Sundar and team talk about. Here's where I think we can have an impact, and here's what I want to do with that. Let's talk about that, see if I'm aligned. How's that aligned with what you're expecting? A great way to make sure you're aligned, that's how you make a 132,000 member company feel like every single person can make an impact. If you're a customer, sit down and have the conversation. If the company you're analyzing is a customer or partner, go through that analysis, sit down with your sales manager and account team. And the whole purpose of that is to say, how can we become a better partner with them? How can what we learned about our customer help us to kind of speak their language, what they expect to do, and how it can impact how our products or service can help them impact their goals and objectives. And if you're looking at a competitor, how can we differentiate ourselves? How can we compete what's going on next door to us in our competitive landscape? But that's the goal. At the end of this, get that information and have a conversation with, depending on who you're looking at, what organization, to help improve the success of the organization you're looking at. Folks, that is the tool. That's the analyze phase, or apply phase. That's the tool. Well, let's talk about, okay, so now we've got this. What are you going to do with this? My goal is this. There's 3 things you need to do, and as you complete these things, there's 3 things you prepare. What happens is that document, as you prepare that becomes part of your preparation next month, next quarter. This document becomes a research that lives and breathes within your routine to help you know what happened in Q3. Okay, Q4's come up. Let me review what I wrote down. Now I can go get ready to listen to the Q4 discussion. So with that in mind, what are you going to do with this? My challenge to you is, who will you analyze? In the chat box, if you don't mind, who will you analyze? We're going to get this tool to you. Who are you going to analyze? Is it a company you work for, a company you sell to, a company you compete against, partner with, invest in, or interested in? Just put in the chat box. I want to know who you're going to look at. To know and not to do is not to know. You've gone through this program today. What are you going to do with it? I love it. Even if you have a specific company you want to look at. Yeah, I see it. CVS, Cisco, excellent. Tesla, love it. We did Tesla a few months ago. GameStop, yeah, GameStop's a great one with what's going on there. Absolutely. So I've got to get some stuff to you. So let me go and get this to you. First of all, if you want to look at Alphabet, Q4 earnings call, take a picture of this screen. It's next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Now remember, you don't have to be on the call because they create a transcript and they'll have a YouTube link on their website so you can listen to it anytime. But I wanted to give you that data. If you're interested in Alphabet to see what's going on, here's that. In addition to that, if you're new to Acumen Learning, quick introduction to Acumen Learning. We focus on business and financial acumen training consulting. We've had a chance to work with many great companies, 30 of the Fortune 50. Our goal is to help employees understand how a company makes money, how decisions are made around the money-making process, and what can they do to impact the success. We had a few years ago, one of our clients got a third party to say, what sort of impact do we make within their businesses? And these 6 items were the key things. Improve the performance of your business and function, increase collaboration, improve upward communication, improve employee engagement, increase business focus, and improve teamwork. For those that have gone through our course, go ahead and A, B, C, or D? Which one stood out to you as what you benefited? How did you get benefit from our program? Now, for those that are new to us, I'm going to give you a link that's going to provide access. If you want to learn more about Acumen Learning, there's a place for us to do that. There's a place for you to get more information about what we do. We do live sessions, virtual sessions. We've got a self-paced program. We do earnings calls, how to help employees do a deep dive on their earnings call, get comfortable for it, etc. Looks like a lot of E, increase business focus is great. C, improve upward communications. Really what it does is it makes you be seen as somebody who truly understands the business. So a lot of benefits that come from that. So thank you. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. So where are you going to get this? First of all, if you're interested in a deeper dive, or maybe you've taken a course and you want to review, we've got this phenomenal online self-paced program called Seeing the Big Picture. Walks you through the 5 drivers, also walks you through how to look at statements. If you go to this link, you'll get a coupon that gives you $100 off. A great review, or if you're new, want a deeper dive, that's where you're going to get. At that same website, you can get access to the workbook. Download that, have that available. In addition, if you want additional data, you want to learn more about Acumen Learning, you want to do this with your team, or you've got a segment of your business you want to take us through, in there's a place to sign up, and one of my phenomenal sales directors will follow up with you. And then last but not least, Kenny the Extraordinaire, one of our top consultants, will be on the call February 25th. You're going to want to mark this. Go to acumenlearning.com webinar, and there's a place. Type in, I want to get invited to the next call, and we'll make sure you're invited as we look at Walmart here in about a month. Folks, we do these every 4th Thursday of the month is when we do those. So love to have you. And continue to do this. We'll just continue to build your capabilities. With that in mind, it's truly been a pleasure on behalf of Acumen Learning. Thank you so much for your time. Myself, Kenny, and our Acumen Learning team will stay on the call. Kenny, if there's any questions we want to try and address, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for your time and have a great day. Make sure you get the Acumen Learning. We've got it there in the chat box. Let's go ahead and put that in again as that starts to build. Make sure that we have that. Click on that link. You'll get access to everything we've talked about today. Thank you for your time. Stay on if you want to ask questions. Otherwise, have a great day. Let's see. I'm going to jump to the Q&A and see if there's any questions we have here. Will the recording be sent? I believe on let's see, Brooklyn, help me out here. I think when we send a follow-up email, there's a link that takes them to access. Is that correct on that? I may be speaking wrong, but I need some help on that question.
Yes, they'll be sent the recording.
Yeah, so it'll be sent to you a link to the recording, yes. So you can share this with your teams. And again, come back to future ones. Does it give them access to the previous ones? I can't remember. We've got Tesla on there, Amazon on there, Pfizer on there, a number of them. As far as the PowerPoint, we don't share the PowerPoint. That's not something that we make available, but obviously the tool is the core of the PowerPoint. So you're going to have all those slides there and available to you there, Sanjita. Let's see, was there any other questions from previous? If I might need to add okay. That looks like I don't have any Q&A in the Q&A, just a couple that we've answered here. Well, folks, thank you very much for your time. Just disconnect, leave the room. That's how we'll know we'll wrap this thing up. Let's see, we still have about 100 people in the room, but please just leave. We'll know we can move on. Again, if you have any other questions, we're here. Got my Acumen Learning team, and Kenny the Extraordinaire is on the phone. He is extraordinary. I'm not just making this up. He'll be great. Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much, Stevie. Appreciate it's good to have you on with us. Yes, can't wait for Kenny. Absolutely. Okay, going once, going twice. Anybody have a question? I still have 47 of you on. Just want to make sure I don't cut anybody off. I'm assuming since I don't have any questions, we're good. We'll go ahead and start shutting this down. Ginger, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.